Thank you for joining the November 15th, 2018 VOLTA call. We do have a few agenda topics today to discuss, and we do record the meetings to post them on YouTube, so keep that in mind during any presentations or discussion today. And with that, I think we will get started. So since we spent most of the time on new issues, and then we had a demo on Tuesday, we deferred some of the sprint update discussions to today. We've gotten started on that Tuesday, but I wanted to follow up and see if there are other items we need to get some updates on, since next week is the last week for Sprint 10. And there is one new item also that I added to the agenda after I sent out the email last night. And so that was, I had a discussion with Arun, and he agreed to give a brief update of the adaptive containerization work, since there have been a number of VOLTA Discuss topics and then also conference calls related to that. I just wanted to get a brief readout to the team, so he agreed to give that today. And then we'll go into the sprint updates, and just also a reminder on the schedule for next week. Thursday's call next week is canceled, and Sean will be hosting next Tuesday's call if one is needed. And then also the week of December 4th through 6th, which is the same week as ONF Connect, we're canceling the Tuesday call, but we will hold the Thursday call as usual. So just a reminder to everyone on those schedule updates. And with that, we'll go over to new JIRA issues. Just a couple of them have come in, and there has been some discussion on VOLTA Discuss as well on at least one of them. So the first new item is VOL 1328. OLT ONUs are unreachable after trying to delete another OLT. And so this is after deleting a wrongly configured OLT that was in BBSIM. Connectivity was lost to all of the OLTs and ONUs. And let me see if Serkant is on. I don't see him on the bridge. Is there anyone else who can give any brief comments on this item? All right, I'm not hearing anyone speak up.
Has this been observed by other people? I don't know. He said he lost all the connectivity to OLT and ONUs. Is that the physical OLT, ONU, or additional ones?
Yeah, with this one, we need to get a sequence of steps to reproduce. It seems, that disable deleting an OLT and XOS, removing it from there as well, there's a sequence of steps that have to be done. And I pointed out on the mailing list not too long ago that the only thing that will lock an ONU is the workflow. VOLTA won't lock any ONU. So there's some sequencing that has to be done. One thing I will do, though, that I've changed recently is I've turned back on OMCI MIB storage, the base class behavior, and that does cause ONU startup and MIB synchronization to take much longer. And that timing, that taking longer may have uncovered something else, somewhere else that's running in the workflow. So I'm going to go ahead and have a quick patch to have the OMCI MIB stored in memory again, just to see if the behavior changes, and then from there we can decide how to chase this down.
Okay. Thank you for that, Matt.
Sure.
I paused screen sharing for a bit. Hopefully it has resumed. Then we have one additional issue that was opened, and that is VOL 1329. Oh, didn't change. Try again. Oh, and you got disabled by Uni lock task during MIB sync. And this, I believe,
this is the one
discussion as well. Yeah.
This is the one that I guess I was really thinking of, but I think the two of them both happened kind of in the same scenario. but yeah, in both cases, XOS is involved, and need to kind of get a sequence of what exactly is done and which workflow is running, and go from there.
Okay, and so I do see that there were the logs attached. So should I put in a request to you for, I can't remember if you put a request in over VOLTHA Discuss for more details, or if I should add a comment in here.
It probably wouldn't hurt to have it in here, but
Okay.
the sequence of build up from starting fresh with nothing running all the way to fully loaded pod with OLT, ONU, XOS entries, workflows running, and then, you know, restart an OLT, delete an OLT, put it back, you know, the actual sequence that got it in this state.
Okay, thanks. All right, let me just refresh here. I believe those were the only two I saw as of this morning, and nothing more has come in. So there's the two new defects. We'll do a little more background work on seeing how to reproduce these, and then maybe they can be discussed further if needed next Tuesday if there is a call. And so with that, let me go back to the agenda. All right, so next, Arun, I believe I saw you join. Are you connected on the bridge?
Yeah, Julie.
Great, thank you. So next, if you wouldn't mind, Arun, I'd like to have you give the brief update or summary on what's going on so far on the adapter containerization discussions and efforts.
Yeah, right. So, Julie, to start with that, along with the obvious thing to create a docket for all the containers, there were two major items that we were discussing in the last couple of weeks. We had some discussion calls around that. One is what will be the strategy to create to spawn the containers, and second is how much code we need to change to get the containerization work done completely. And when
One moment. I'm having a little difficulty hearing you on the bridge. I'm not sure if there's a way to improve the audio or not.
Is it better now?
I'm sorry. I may be the only one having difficulty. I can just
No,
check.
no, me too. I can't hear well.
Okay.
So can you just give me a minute? I'll reconnect the audio.
Okay, I think you said give you a minute and then we'll try again.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So in that case, while you're working on that, let me go ahead. I'll jump over to Sprint 10 updates, and then we'll circle back with Arun and see if we can resolve the audio issue. Okay. So the Sprint 10 update, we had some great discussion last week. On Tuesday on the last call on 7:32. That one remained blocked until the status changes merged. And I did not check this morning, but I believe where we were at with that was Gamza had uploaded the updated patch last Friday, and Amit was going to do some retesting, but needed to wait until the environment was available for him to do that, which may not be this week. Amit, I think I see you on as well. Is that a correct assessment from your side?
Yes, Julie. So
Okay.
I can't get access to the setup yet. So I'll try if I can manage to get it done tomorrow. Else it would be early next week.
Okay. Thank you, Amit. All right. So I think that we have other issues that are blocked by that issue as well. Work on the technology profiles. And so once that's tested, then I believe, let me see if David's on, I believe David was going to work on getting it merged in once things are tested and verified and everyone's happy with the updates. So we'll keep tracking that. And then 1221, we had some discussion as well that was under review, and there was a request for some testing. And so let me see, it looks like Arun is coming back in. He may need a minute to connect on the audio. So let me go over to, oh, yes?
Julie, yeah. So how's it now?
Oh, much better. Yes, much better.
Great.
Then I will hand it back to you. Thanks.
Okay, so I hope everybody is able to listen to fine now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was saying that so one obvious task is to create the containers, the Docker containers for all the adapters, or to start with the open novelty adapter. The other two main tasks that we were thinking about, and we had certain discussions around them in last couple of weeks. One is to what will be the strategy to create to spawn the containers, and second one is how much is the code that we need to change to make the containerization work done for open novelty. And when I say strategy for spawning the containers, so there were some ideas which were flown around. So one was to have one container for each device, versus there was another idea to have one container for each vendor type. And there were some other discussions about having the flexibility between these two options. So I think we are more or less decided on creating one container per vendor type. So if we have multiple devices with one vendor, we will have one container, and later on, when the performance or the HA requirements come up, then we need to think about how we basically manage that in a way, like if we have that number of devices already connected to the container, and then we need to spawn another container to manage the performance, and also in the case when the container goes bad, so we need to respawn that. Then what happens to the devices which are already being managed by that container? So those are the things that we need to decide on. But I
And
think
and
yeah.
also we decided that we'll have one container per vendor. So when the new vendor OLT is pre-provisioned, then we need to figure out who and where we will create this new container.
Yeah, so I think we can start in the very first phase. We will start with doing that manually, and then later on we will decide how to basically automate that thing. So that is the first item. Any questions regarding this as of now? Okay, so the second thing is
I just to take that a little bit. So, you're expecting capacity to determine when you add a new container I mean, let's say I've got 100,000 ONUs of a certain vendor type. How are you expecting that to scale? Are you expecting that to are you expecting it to scale with horizontally with at a certain breakpoint?
I think that could be a case, like if I mean if we devise a way to measure the performance, I mean, with that number of devices being managed by one container, after that much number of devices, the performance gets degraded, then we actually need to scale out. So that could be one idea, yeah.
But are you expecting it to be a runtime thing, or are you expecting it to be a prescriptive thing? I mean, are you expecting to say, oh, look, we don't like how quickly ONUs are coming up or whatever. We don't like our performance, so now I have to manually spin up a container? Or are we expecting it to be more, we know that when we hit 10,000 ONUs, we're gonna prescriptively say that you have to spin up another container, because now we're dynamically not spinning up containers on startup based on what we have in our system, but we're now having to real-time monitor the system for number of devices, I guess. I mean, are you actively going in and changing Helm charts on the fly to let Kubernetes know? I mean, what kind of activities are you thinking to manage this?
Yeah, I understand your question, Michael, but what I'm saying is this is still in the ideation phase. So we need to figure out how exactly we need to do that. I mean, the ideal way is to basically do it through some policy in which there could be some policy and with some rules which say that after this much number of devices we need a new container, and whatever that needs to be done to make it happen, that we need to do in the code or Helm charts or wherever the changes are required. So that's my view. Does this give the answer to the question?
Well, we're at AT&T, we're trying to come up with, how much server, how much compute, how much things do we need in a scaled out fashion, and this just kind of tells me that we really don't know how many containers we're going to have when we start to scale out ONUs. So we don't really have a very good way of estimating how much CPU or how much server we need. So that's just a little bit. We have people in AT&T hammering us to say, tell us the bomb, tell us the bomb, tell us the bomb, and we're like, well, we're not quite sure yet. So anyway, okay, thank you.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly my point. Because so to make a decision on any policy, to do it automatically or to do it manually, we need to have some reference point, like after this much amount of devices or whatever the measure that we finalize, we need to spawn up a new container. So that needs to be decided, but that is a plan, and that's the idea to do it right now. Like with that number of devices already being managed by one container, we will be spawning another container, but what that number will be, that we need to, I think, if we do some performance testing after this whole containerization thing is done, then I think we can come up with a more better idea of what exactly would that number be, and based upon that, how much CPU and how much the other resources will be required. Okay. So second thing is basically to what will be the code magnitude of the code change that will be required to make the containerization happen. So in the very initial discussions what we had with Shad and Craig and other guys, we had discussed that to move the OpenOLT code from 1.x to 2.x as a skeleton code, and then to make some incremental changes to get it working with the 2.x core. But that approach, actually yesterday we had a call with Ken and Craig and other guys. Shad was not there. So we also have another approach, like not to do that, not to move the code to 2.x repo, but to use the same code base, but to write a shim layer on top of that, so that it can manage whether core is 1.x core or 2.x core. So this is something that still we are in discussion with, and I believe today Dinesh will be having a discussion with Shad, and then we can come up with a another, I think, a more better approach or something we can finalize, and we can start working on that.
Basically, the idea is to create a common OpenOLT adapter code which can be shared by 1.5 as well as 2.0. So the details for this needs to be figured out how it can be done.
Yeah. So that's the work which is we are actually doing right now.
Is that going to be? I mean, as you continue to support two heads, that's really going to kind of. Is it? Well, I guess we'll see how possible it is. But I mean, 1.5 and 2.0 are really going in different directions.
Right. So
you want to pull the Band-Aid off as quick as possible, I think.
Yeah, so the thing is, I mean, one argument was to use the effort which has already been put into the code and not to put any more patches inside the code to work it with only with 2.x core. and in that way not to basically manage two different versions of the code. So that was one argument. So we need to look into the both in both approaches and then finalize one, then start working on that.
I think there's another benefit to the approach, isn't necessarily supporting two baselines, but also minimizing the impacts of the conversion. We're not rewriting a bunch of code in all the adapters to make the conversion.
Right. So so that is all. So if there is any comment around this decision making or any thoughts about the code reorganization and even from the community, then if you can give us, then please, you're most welcome to do that.
So Arun, thanks for taking on this one. But it seems like there's still some decision needs to be made or have a consensus built. And
Yeah.
But so how soon? I mean, once the decision's been made, hopefully maybe by this week, how soon do you think the work can be started and completed? Do you have some idea about that? Maybe Arun and Craig, do you guys have some insight about this?
I have actually, so Sean, actually I came up with a broad task list for the work that needs to be done, and I floated it around the community, and the two main tickets items which come up is basically the code changes, and then obviously to create the containers around the code which is there. So and at that point, we were thinking of minimal code changes to make it happen in 2.x. But if we go through the way of creating a shim layer and then managing the same code base for both branches, then I think we would need some more time to complete it.
Yeah,
So,
because creating common code and all, we might have to create different repos, and we'll have to figure out how do we work with different repos. And because 2.0 is in different repo and 1.5 is in different repo, so we are not sure we should move the OpenVLT adapter code into another repo and work with that.
So to give the answer to your question, I mean, as soon as the decision is done, then we can start working on the code portion. But I think the other task to create the containerization, there are some tasks which can be done in parallel, not much. So I think it all depends upon the completion of this task, the reorganization of the code or creating a shim layer, if that is the approach.
Okay, I will see whether Shad can also provide some comment on this one.
Yeah.
Matt, do you have any suggestion, or I'm just wondering whether you deal with the adapters sometimes. So is there any suggestion you think? Okay.
So Sean, actually, I and Dinesh are also very eagerly waiting for Shad's comments. So, but I think he's quite busy with some other tasks. So I have requested Dinesh to sit down with Shad today and ask about his inputs, and then I think we can float around the ideas which they discuss in the community, and then we can come up to a consensus.
Sean, my overall concern is that if we don't put in the effort up front, all the adapters, not just OpenVLT, all the adapters are going to have go through a process of rooting through all their internals to be able to rewrite whatever is necessary for the the conversion and end up with two different code bases. I think the effort that we put in up front to provide a shim layer, although it has advantages to supporting 1.x and 2.x, I think the more important advantage is that it provides a utility that any of the adapter authors can use for making the migration to 2.x. And you know, all the adapters, there's lots of code and lots of different adapters and OMCI that we have to make a decision on how to, you know, make the conversion. You know, we're continuing to actively support those load lines in the 1.x master branch. You know, I agree with Michael's statement of, you know, it's moving in different directions, but at some point in time, you have to be able to recognize that we're maintaining both branches. And if they're in two different repos, it's going to be very difficult to maintain.
Yeah, of course.
As we're making code changes. So I think it's important that we've come up with a mechanism where we could share the repo for, you know, all the adapter code, including OMCI and resource manager and tech profile, that is maintained on two different branches rather than putting them in two different repos.
Right. Okay.
Yes, so it's not just about OpenVolt adapter, it's about other code related to that as well.
Okay. Sorry, I wasn't able to get on the call yesterday, so maybe I'll go back to take a listen to the recording. Again, you know, thanks for leading this, and then I'll see whether I can get a hold of Shah today, also. But Arun, keep trying. Yeah, keep trying to. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Anyone, Sean, or anyone else?
No, no.
Okay. Then Arun,
I do have a.
Yes.
No, you know, if we have, you know, one next topic to talk about, I was seeing the registration ID stuff. So the Jason and Craig has some message exchange on the VOLTHA Discuss. So is there something we should also talk about here?
That would probably be a good idea because we've got the group together here. So the only other topic we had for discussion today was just continuing the sprint updates we had for sprint 10. So that can continue Tuesday as well. What I could do perhaps, Sean, is let me just go over to the JIRA board quickly.
Okay.
And which screen do I have? And then, you know, we have the status for the status work going on for 732. So that and other related tickets are blocked until that's resolved. So we know the status there. I think the 1221 was under discussion and under review. Do we have any other specific items that the group would like to dive into today for the to-do or the in-progress items? If not, then I think we could go on to the discussion that Sean mentioned. So let me just take a quick look. Are there any roadblocks we're having on other issues that need to be addressed with the group? Okay, I'm not hearing any. So just a reminder to everyone, we are planning to close Sprint 10 at the end of next week. And then I think this is the issue 1022, Sean, that you were talking about. And there's a thread on VOLTHA Discuss for this. I think it's in VOLTHA Discuss. Oh, nope, we've got comments in JIRA as well. So I could just bring that up here. So Sean, I think let's go ahead then and go into discussion on this item. So this is the reporting of the ONI registration IDs from VOLTHA. This is work that was brought in by a DT requirement, and Jason is working on that. And we've got some active discussion on VOLTHA Discuss and some comments as well. So with that, okay. Sean, did you want to say anything specific or?
Okay. So Craig, I believe the registration ID, it's sort of the password. So I think the use case is the subscriber will enter on the portal has a ID, the registration ID entered. so I didn't have quite much time to look at your comment. So do you have any question you want to ask, or?
No.
Well, I guess I want to understand what the overall workflow is expected to be. Typically, the registration ID, as you mentioned, is provisioned in the ONT either through a local portal or some mechanism. And also provisioned somewhere in the northbound system to authenticate that ONT, but it controls the activation of the ONT on essentially authenticating the ONT. And the work, I don't quite understand what the intended workflow is to push, during discovery. Are we anticipating pushing to
I do believe the registration ID is used to do the authentication of the ONT also. So there is authentication portion of that. So the registration ID
at the GTC layer or at the ePOL layer, right? So what looks like is happening right now in the environment is that retrieving the registration ID from the ONU and then turning around and using that registration ID to activate it. The feed the whole purpose.
Yes. I'm Jason. I want to speak in some more. As I test the bare SDK behavior with the registration ID, so it's very relative to auto discovery mode. So initially the auto discovery mode is disabled. So you don't care about the registration ID and setting. So if you set the auto discovery, and you need to care about the registration ID, so we can make a decision for the how can to do the method of the registration ID for every ONU. So we need to do some setting on the CLI, on the configuration by default, and or technical profile for every different vendor ONU, and to activate the ONU. So I just submit the code for the registration ID to read the registration ID from the ONU. So you can set up and auto discovery or registration ID to activate the ONU. So you can see my test enable, disable the chart, the table you can see, and a different scenario. So we can reference the different scenario to make sure every ONU can be activation.
I mean, really, the registration ID in essence replaces the serial number as a validation check. I mean, it's not.
I think it's in addition. I think they're using both. I think Björn is on the call right now. Björn, do you want to? I don't know whether you. Can you make a comment on this?
Yes, so I'm on the way to the airport, so maybe it's a bit noisy. Sorry for that. We are using, so it's right now it's a bit not that easy. So right now we are using the registration ID and only the registration ID for authentication, the ONT. And after the first authentication, the system okay, the legacy system, but that's a process today, learns the serial number from the authenticated ONT, and for each following power cycle, just check the serial number. So that's a process we have implemented today in our legacy system. So maybe it's not that important to have these follow-up process. But the initial process to validate or authenticate the ONT using the registration ID instead of the serial number, that probably we have to keep in our system, because it's part of our service provisioning process, and probably we have to keep this process also for our future platform based on Cord or whatever. And therefore we need the registration ID in the higher layer management and control systems. So and for the process, so the registration ID will be configured into the ONT only locally. So it's there's no option to configure it remotely to the ONT. It has to be configured locally to the ONT, and then the ONT will connect to the OLT and comes up with the, of course, with the serial number, but also with the registration ID. And the authentication process is to compare the credentials from the ONT with credentials provided by our BSS OSS systems. And there we only provide the registration ID, and then it compares the both registration IDs, and if there's a match, then it's authenticated and can get up in service.
I have questions. Why want to power cycle on you?
Yeah, yeah, that's up to the customer. So the ONU is in the customer premises. So if it is connected to a power strip and the customer decides to switch off the power strip during nighttime, then it will power cycle. So we cannot avoid that. We cannot force the customer to keep it powered on all the way.
Even if it's not a choice, power goes off sometimes. So I mean, and even if you have a batteries run out sometimes. Right. So even if it's not a constant choice, it's going to happen at some point.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I guess so. I think Mike was right. So the registration ID is used only for the first initial turn up. So you can, and because of the registration ID flow, and then will come with a serial number, so you can use that, and then basically you capture the serial number. And the northbound will capture it, so basically link so basically you will learn the serial number of that ONT, right? So registration.
But I mean, at some point to simplify it, and I don't know if this breaks DT's process or not, but I mean, the registration ID is going to come every time. So I mean, I mean, I don't know if we need a first time, second time differentiation between the two. I mean, the registration ID comes every time, right? I mean, it's not just the first. Does the registration ID only come the first time, or it comes every time?
No, it comes every time.
So I think it's layer 2.
Let me finish first. Of course, it comes every time, and it might be also an option. So I don't see any blocking point for that, to do this authentication after a power cycle always on a registration ID. So that's not a problem. It's not implemented in that way today, but I don't see a point on that.
So after power cycle on you, the registration ID is different or the same?
The same, absolutely the same.
The same.
It's the same. It's the same for the same serial number. So I would presume that if you ever had to change out the ONT, you might actually get the same registration ID on a different serial number. Is that a case? Is that a workflow that you would have, or would if you have to change out the ONT, you would get a different registration ID?
No, absolutely, and that's one of the big reasons behind that, so that you can change the ONT without any knowledge about the serial number. You just You just type in the same registration ID, and the OLT learns it again, and everything is fine.
Yeah, it actually simplifies the process in that you only or ever have to be provisioned a registration ID. You don't have to worry about changing serial numbers, which VOLTHA is handling today, I guess, in some form or fashion. But yeah, I mean, for simplicity's sake, I would think that we would simply implement let's use registration ID instead of serial number. But I mean.
So I think its layer has two phrases, the authentication. The first one is the serial number also certification. The second phrase is the registration ID. You can set a specific registration ID for the so different on you. So you need to figure out what is the serial number. Is belong to the which registration ID for this on you. So I think we need to do two phrases the authentication for every on you. Is I say right?
I think it's different. I think registration ID replaces serial number. It sounds to me that
right.
At least in the first case, not two-phase. I mean, you don't want to get stuck trying to verify both, because then, as they were just saying, if I replace my ONT, I'm going to have the same registration ID, but I'm going to have a different serial number. So I mean, you don't want to tie the two together necessarily. I think in one case you just want to use registration ID, and in a different case you want to use serial number. I think it's really two different cases as opposed to two-factor.
Hi, Jason. This is Amit. I gave some comments on the Gerrit review. So basically, one of the comments is that the registration ID is supposed to be 36 bytes long. But what I see in the code, that it has been stored as a uint 64. So can't really understand that.
But it's a memory space. I cannot use the 32, so I just use the 64 memory space to store the registration ID. So I can change the string different the type, the variable type. So I just use the 64 length.
Yeah, and the other comment was that we have changed the OpenFlow proto file, and I see that we're trying to send the registration ID back to ONOS using the OFP desk field, which basically captures the capabilities of the switch. So like there are two questions in that. One is, first of all, can we modify this structure? How would ONOS be able to interpret this data? Do we need to change in ONOS? And the other is because we're using the structure which is going to give the capabilities of the switch, but the registration ID is going to be per ONU. So how do we carry multiple registration IDs for multiple ONUs through this?
So multiple ONU. So I'm trying to figure out what is next step for multiple ONU. And I want to say this is a first initial call for this stage. So yes, we can think about what's the multiple ONU for ONOS communication.
Okay. So the other part also, I think I'm not sure about it, but maybe we should check with either Saurav or Shad that can we modify this structure to carry this information? Because I would think that we would need corresponding changes in ONOS because we're changing the OpenFlow protocol itself, right?
Okay, you can comment my code. I can make a comment or modify for your requirement.
So one question is, for example, right, how am I saying? So potentially for other service provider don't use registration IDs, but the registration ID field will still populate northbound, but it's just empty or something like that, or it will be disabled.
So Sean, as of today, there is no field which is carrying, or there is no container or provision to pass the registration ID northbound from the adapters or from VOLTHA, and that is one of the tricky parts of this user story or task, right? That how do we carry the 36-byte long registration ID from VOLTHA to ONOS, and the only communication channel that we have is OpenFlow. So we are carrying the serial number using the port name, which is 16, which can hold 16 bytes, and the serial number will be within that range. So that is not a problem. But for the registration ID being 36 bytes, we can't use the port name to carry that. So we have to figure out a way, is what my understanding of the problem was, that we have to figure out a way of how to pass it using OpenFlow. What we had done earlier was that we used Kafka to send this out from the adapter itself, so that other systems can read the registration ID, and over Kafka it's straightforward, right? You can pass anything. So now with OpenOLT, where everything is bottom up and all the control goes to ONOS, we need to figure out a way of how to pass this info to ONOS.
Okay.
So I've got a question for the group here today. So we've had a lot of good discussion today, I think. I'm not sure whether we can resolve this over kind of continued discussion in VOLTHA Discuss and in the comments in Jira and Garrett, or do we need to have sort of a breakout session, a dedicated call for continued discussion with the group? Any thoughts?
Hi. This is Vikas. So I just had a point that I'd like to make. I think I agree with Craig's proposal on this Jira, and I see something similar written in 984.3 spec, wherein registration ID is to be used the first time ONT comes up, and then the system should learn the corresponding serial number, and then subsequently serial number gets used. So what I'll do is I'll put in a comment on this ticket with the relevant section numbers in 84.3 so that others in community can also take a look.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
I think at this point, I didn't hear a request for a separate session, so we'll go ahead and continue with the comments in Jira and Garrett and over VOLTHA Discuss as well. And then if we decide that a separate call is needed, please let me or Sean know. Next week I will be out of the office, so you may need to contact Sean, if you don't mind, if something's needed during maybe on Tuesday. Other than that, after Sprint 10, then I'll be back and we can schedule a session if needed. But we'll see if we can handle it over just written exchange of comments in the various systems.
Right, and then I think for next Tuesday, I tentatively to see whether we have, the OpenOLT containerization. I potentially want to use next Tuesday as a sync up again on the next Tuesday call. So if everybody's cleared up everything before that, then we can cancel next Tuesday. Otherwise, I'll host that specifically for the OpenOLT adapter and ONU adapter also sync up again. We definitely, if the community wants to talk about this registration ID implementation, we can also add that in. But definitely, I think the OpenOLT adapter right now probably require a lot of attention at this point. Ken, do you have anything you may want to address maybe next Tuesday?
In terms of the core factor refactoring and affinity routing?
Yeah.
Sure. I can just talk about about the status.
Okay.
Well, no problem.
Okay. So
and since you guys in Canada, you don't have Thanksgiving next week anyway.
No. We are brothers, so we celebrate your holidays too.
Okay.
Sean,
So Sean, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sean, Julie has set up Wednesday morning 8 a.m. meeting for containerization, so we could use that also if you want.
Oh, I only
Julie,
did it for the 1 week.
Yeah, only one time.
We need to have
I thought it is recurring.
Oh, let me check. I'll have to check the calendar. If I set it up incorrectly, I'll see. I meant for it to do a single one. Let's see. Let me go back to where's VOLTHA? Here's VOLTHA. Let's go take a look. No, it was just set up as a single meeting.
Oh, okay.
So if we need to schedule some recurring sessions, we can do that as well.
No, I think probably just, I'll use the next Tuesday for that.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So Sean, I think next Tuesday, likely there will be a call. Sounds like it may be pretty busy actually with the discussion topics. Let me actually go back here. I think since we wrapped up that one discussion. So typically we would have this sort of discussion that I could bring up right now next Thursday, but since I will be out of the office, I'm just going to briefly touch on it now. And that is kind of taking another look at our sprint schedule. Because I think, what's pretty clear at this point is that, we need additional time for the containerization work. So things are proceeding, but that's going to take some more time. We had initially targeted sprint 10 to be primarily integration testing, with the containerization of the adapters and the core work going on first, then going into Kubernetes cluster environment integration testing, and then sprint 11 was going to be dedicated as a hardening sprint. But with the state of what I hear is going on the containerization and on other things, I think it's pretty clear that we're going to need additional time. So I'm expecting this to carry over at least to sprint 11. So if I could ask the folks working on containerization, as things start to come together, if you can give me a ballpark estimate, Arun, I may task you with this if possible, of what you expect the required number of sprints to be to complete the work, then we can address that during one of our calls looking at the schedule. But I think we need to go back and look at this, and I think maybe we'll do that in 2 weeks and sort of do some re-looking at the current sprint schedule and see what needs to change or what needs to happen at that point, because our targeted release date was going to be the middle of December. So I think it's time to do another sync up and assessment on schedule and taking a realistic look at the remaining work.
You mean the reality check?
Yes. so that I can make sure, because this is the info that we have on the wiki with our sprint schedule and our target for the date. So if this is not accurate anymore, I'd like to do some cleanup on that document and update it since it's a publicly available document. Okay, so that's just a little spiel from me. I think maybe we can address that in a couple of weeks with the community, but a heads up on that, because looking at this, I am not expecting that we'll end up with only hardening in sprint 11 based on where we are in kind of the later phases of sprint 10. Any other comments from the group today? I know this wasn't on the agenda for discussion, so just brought it up since we were doing some other administrative things.
Or any comment if you want to send it to Julie and I separately,
Yeah.
that's fine too.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay. All right. With that, let me go back to my right screen to the active sprints again. And one last check. Let's see, was there anything else I needed to? I know we've got the work Craig's doing for this. We've got other items blocked here. One last call if there are specific JIRAs that anyone on the team would like to look at for Sprint 10 with the group today. We dove into some of it on 10/22, and we'll continue that discussion perhaps next Tuesday. Okay.
Amit.
Oh, yes.
Amit, if that's 732. If something, if you don't have the testing facility, I'm wondering whether just by reviewing code and then it can be determined whether it can go forward or not. Can you help out with that?
Yeah, so Sean, I've looked at the code. I think it should be fine. I don't see a reason as to why it should not work. And I think it is safe to merge it. And in case if it doesn't work, we can always revert it back. But I don't see a big risk. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe let's, and then I'll ask Dave Bainbridge to give it a +2 today.
Okay, I was going to ask Sean if you would be able to chat with David, because I believe he was looking for testing prior to giving the +2. So if you'll be able to cover that with him, that would be great. We'll see what the response is, see what we can do to get things moving forward. Okay, thanks Amit, thanks Sean. Any other items? All right, so we didn't have any demos scheduled for today or additional technical deep dives, so I think you'll get about a half hour back here. So we'll go ahead and wrap up. Last call for questions or comments before we break for today. Okay, hearing nothing, just a reminder, next Thursday we're canceling the meeting, and then Sean will be opening the bridge on Tuesday for discussion. And then Sean, I'll let you update on the agenda for Tuesday's call when it gets closer to that time, if that's all right. Okay, thanks everyone. I will go ahead and close the bridge.